I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Time for my much anticipated annual 2020 Vancouver market outlook, or my forecast for the coming year. And when I say Vancouver, you can apply this. Vancouver is my main market, of course, downtown, the surrounding neighborhoods of Vancouver, Mount Pleasant, Kitsilano, Fairview, East Side, West Side. But you can apply this to most cities in the Lower Mainland, Richmond, Burnaby, New Westminster, etc. But for this blog, I'm going to concentrate on my main area, which is Vancouver and Vancouver condos and East Side, West Side neighborhoods. Before I start, though, I always put it out here, my little caveat here is that, as I've been doing for the last 9 years here, is that, what the market does in the short term, and I'm going to get right to the chase here and say that I think 2020 is going to be another pretty healthy year for Vancouver real estate, just like 2019 was, especially the back half of 2019, where condos sales are up, prices have been very resilient and starting to trend up again. But the message is what the market does 6 months from now, or a year from now, or 2 years from now, should be of very little concern to 99% of you. Because most of you are either A, going to be buying a principal residence, first-time buyer buying your principal residence. That's a 40 or 50-year need. And I can tell you, if you buy that house, enjoy it. You might want to sell it down the road to move up to a bigger and better place, but just stay in the market. You're going to do incredible. You're going to take advantage of all that capital gains tax-free with the principal resident exemption and take advantage of these low borrowing rates we're currently enjoying, and I think we're going to enjoy for some time to come. If you're an investor, pretty much the same thing. You're going to use leverage, put 20% down, borrow the other 80%, put a well-qualified tenant in there, and keep the damn thing for 20 or 30 years. Then have a look at what it's worth, and you're going to be very pleased. The tenant is going to pay down all your holding costs, and probably, as the mortgage continues on, a good bit of your principal payments as well. Again, when you sell it, you're not going to get all the capital gains tax-free, but at least it's capital gains, which is taxed at a very favorable rate, 50%. So before I start into 2020 and where I see the market going, what's holding back this Vancouver real estate market, and what the catalysts are going forward, they're pretty much the same as last year. Let's take a look at 2019. 2019 was actually a pretty strong year for Vancouver real estate. If you've been watching my blogs all year, starting last spring, 2019, I was telling people that the Vancouver condo market is strong. People should realize something. We never strayed in to even a balanced market on Vancouver one-bedroom or one-and-dan or lower-priced two-bedroom condos in the downtown core. We came close. We were at about a 20 to 21 sales to active listings ratio. Anything over 20 is considered a seller's market. Now, of course, as I speak now, we're up near 40% on the sales to active, strong seller's market. But the condo market was very robust, and it picked up steam in the spring, and then it really started to pick up steam in the fall of 2019. So it was a pretty good market. Contrary to what some people, if you're in that echo chamber of negativity and listening to kind of the fake stats that some of these guys are putting out, I had several all-time price records on detached homes, starter-level detached homes. In East Vancouver, I had several, and I also had some in Richmond. These were new high watermark prices for that size house on that size lot. I also came very close to setting some new high price marks in certain stratas in Vancouver and in Richmond. I think in 2020, we'll see, I'll do this blog next year in 2021. I'm pretty certain that I will set some new high watermark prices for some Vancouver condos, mostly in the one-bedroom area. I've got a pipeline of listings. I've got about 6 listings I'm getting ready to put out here in the next 30 days. I've also got a whole bunch of listings I'm going to be putting out later this spring and summer. I've got some good ones in the pipeline. And I'm pretty certain with the way this market is headed, inventory ultra low, interest rates low, and buyers now out in droves. They took a little breather for a year, 18 months, and now they're back. I'm pretty certain that this time next year I will be telling you that I have set some new high watermark prices in some stratas in downtown Vancouver. We'll see. But 2019 was a pretty strong year. So 2020, let's take a look first off at, same thing as last year, of what is hindering or holding this market back a little bit, especially more on the luxury end now. But let's face it, no matter who you are, and I don't care what your political affiliations are, you have to admit that Governments at all levels, federal, provincial, and local, the City of Vancouver, have thrown everything but the kitchen sink at this Vancouver market to try and bring down prices. Through the stress test, which I'll talk about in a minute, is by far the biggest one put down by the federal government. But of course, the myriad of what I call envy taxes by the BC NDP, the BC speculation tax, which is not a speculation tax at all. That's what capital gains tax is. It's just an envy tax. The school tax, which is not, that money's not going to schools. That might be the most heinous of all of them. The Vancouver empty homes tax, the foreign buyers tax, and then I would say just the overall, business environment that our current provincial government puts out there for businesses. It's not a friendly environment to be in. So the biggest one, though, of course, that had a biggest effect was the stress test that was introduced 18 months ago, 2% stress test. Now, that took down affordability by about 20 to 25%, and that had the biggest impact by far. If you go back and watch my blogs when that was introduced, just as predicted, I said that is going to have an impact, and it did. The market slowed dramatically as far as sales, but also, as I predicted, I said that give it a little bit of time. These taxes tend to get digest. It takes a little bit of time. We had been on a 5-year incredible run here in real estate. There was a lot of buyer fatigue at the time anyways, and we needed a break, and that was the catalyst to start the break. But as expected, that stress test, people seem to be getting comfortable with it, and it's in the rearview mirror now. But it still definitely is having an effect on the market. If they remove that, or even reduced it from 2 to 1, watch out. This market would go on a tear here for sure. Federal government knows that. They want to try and keep these prices in check. It's not going anywhere for now. But that probably had the biggest effect. That, the envy taxes, the overall sentiment of the market with this current government we have, which is not business friendly, definitely slowed the market in 2018, end of 2018 and into early part of 2019. But as I've said, the condo market has barely been scathed in this so-called correction. The only thing it really hit heavy was the luxury detached market and the luxury condo market, which is now in 2020 showing signs of recovery. So 2020 moving forward, here are the catalysts and why I think 2020 is going to be a pretty strong year for real estate. I think prices are going to be up across the board, from condos to townhomes, detached homes, even the luxury market, which is still, it's not going to go on a tear here, but prices are going to start increasing in 2020 in that market as well. And the reasons for that are the following. A, immigration is a huge thing for Canada and for British Columbia that a lot of people overlook. The federal government has a mandate to bring in something like 250 to 300,000 new immigrants every year into this country for the next 7 or 8 years going forward. About 40 to 45,000 of those will come to British Columbia. The vast majority of those will settle in the Lower Mainland because that's where the jobs are. And of course, 40,000 new people coming into the Lower Mainland, and we are not building anywhere near the supply that we need. And I've done many blogs on this. We're getting what I've been calling a coiled spring effect. The NDP government has not put out a very good environment for developers. Developers don't want anything to do with this government. They are building very little. The numbers are going down instead of up. So we've got 40,000 people coming in and we are not building much. And listen, we never built much before this current government. It's always been what I've talked about, a trickle-in supply, especially in the city of Vancouver. We've got so much bureaucracy, so much red tape, so difficult to get anything zoned and built. It takes 5, 6, 7 years to secure the land and get it built. Unlike a lot of jurisdictions, take for instance Seattle, just down the I-5, which takes a fraction of that time. And I don't know if that's ever going to change. It seems to be getting worse. On top of that, of course, you've got the NIMBYs, very difficult once everything goes through the city to get it approved through the NIMBYs. It all leads up to this trickle-in supply, and it's gotten very bad the last few years. More people coming in, we just don't have the supply, and it's showing that right now. Inventory as I speak right now, January 2020, is some of the lowest I've ever seen. And my clients can attest to that. Some of my buying clients that were waiting on product right now. There's very little for sale. And I think moving forward in this decade, I'll do lots of blogs on this moving forward. That is going to be one of the key things to keep an eye on, is inventory and how little there is for sale. Second thing I'll talk about here, another catalyst, is Vancouver, and I've talked about this before, is turning into what I first thought was going to be a small tech hub. But now I'm changing my mind in talking to some of commercial realtors and many of the young engineers that I've worked with in the last 18 months or so, because they're making up a huge part of my buying clients now. These are young tech engineers working for Amazon, Disney, SAP, Microsoft, etc. I think I had 10 or 12 young tech workers, relatively young, under age 35, that bought condos from me in 2019. And I think we are in right now, and I'm going to do a blog on this later this winter, we're in the first inning of a major downtown office boom. There is something like 4 million square feet of office space coming online in the next 24 months. At the corner of Homer and Georgia Street, where the post office is, where Amazon's building their headquarters, and then across the street another tower, that's right there, 2 million square feet of office space. I posted a couple of Twitter articles on that. So we are in the early stages of a major downtown office boom, and we have not built offices in Vancouver, very little in the last 2 decades. Virtually nothing. There's another 10 or 12 office towers in the design and approval stage right now. And most of this office space has already been accounted for. And many of these are going to be young tech workers. These young tech workers are making $100,000, $125,000, $150,000 a year. They're also giving them a $20,000 or $30,000 relocation bonus. You see, Vancouver, the reason why Vancouver is so hot right now with this is because Vancouver is one of the few cities in North America that has a vibrant downtown. I can only think of a few. San Francisco, Toronto a little bit, not nearly as what Vancouver is. San Francisco, maybe Chicago. So these young engineers, tech engineers, are in high demand. There's more jobs than there are engineers to fill these jobs. So what these companies like Amazon and Microsoft are doing is they're relocating to these desirable cities like Vancouver. And that's helping them attract these talented tech employees. That's their trump card. We'll give you $120,000 a year to start. We'll give you a $25,000 moving bonus to get a place rented to get your feet settled. But the draw here is that they don't need a car. They can walk to work or ride their bike to work. They can walk to dinner, walk to entertainment. Fantastic weather in the summer, mild winters. That's the card here. That's their trump card on how to attract these highly talented engineers. And it's only going to get bigger. You just have to look at the amount of office space that is coming online in Vancouver. This is unprecedented. We haven't built any office space here for decades. Now we've got 15 buildings going up, office buildings. You know, these young tech workers, I tell people, are going to be the future buyers of your units if you're an owner in Vancouver right now. Or if you're an investor, they're going to be your tenants, and they're going to be good tenants. Not going to have a problem paying the rent, that's for sure. Those are some of the big catalysts. The other catalyst, of course, low interest rates. You know, you can lock in a 5-year rate now at about 2.7%. Very low. Some of the lowest I've seen. It's funny because we actually, our mortgage rate should be actually a little bit lower. But of course, the Bank of Canada is holding tight to lowering them anymore. Unlike down in the States where the Fed had 3 reductions last year. We're one of the few major countries in the world that isn't continuing to lower our interest rates because the federal government knows if they drop it another 25 or 50 basis points, it's going to add more flames to the already rising markets now in Toronto and Vancouver that have already started to turn. So low interest rates, and from the economists I follow, it looks like we're going to be in a low interest rate environment for some time to come here. You know, the other thing I'll say is, you know, the Tina effect. There is no alternative. You know, renting long-term in a city like Vancouver or renting long-term in a city like New York or London or San Francisco or a lot of places in Southern California or Toronto doesn't make a lot of economic sense. Most people, I think, realize that. Some don't, but that is the other catalyst here. Nothing wrong with renting short term. You have to while you're saving for your down payment. But if you're going to stay in Vancouver long term, then it should be priority number one to buy your principal residence. And I've done many blogs on the benefits of it. Interest rates would have to get up to, in my opinion, 8 or 9% before renting would be an alternative. But even then, I could show you through the intangibles of owning, property, the principal residence exemption, just the stability you get from owning your principal residence. Still don't think it would make sense. But I don't think interest rates are going to be getting up anywhere to 8 or 9% anytime in the near future, that's for sure. So, in a nutshell, 2020, I think, one last thing I'll say too, I was just at a Rennie economic conference that they invite some of their top producers that have worked with them over the years. Wage growth in the lower mainland right now in Vancouver is running at just over 6%. So it's running at about double the inflation rate. And part of that wage growth is this influx of high-paid tech jobs. So that would just be another one that we could add to the list of catalysts and why I see Vancouver moving forward here. Final other things I'll just say, like I've blogged about many times before, the cavalry is not on the way. There is very little supply coming online, especially in Vancouver. There's a little bit more out in places like the Valley and some of the suburbs, Richmond and Burnaby and Brentwood and that kind of thing, Coquitlam. But for Vancouver, and that's why I'm so bullish on it, very little is going to get built. And what is going to get built here is ultra luxury units. The days of being able to buy something new for under 12 or 1300 a square feet are gone. Everything's going to be starting at 16, 17, 18, up to well over 3,000 a square foot from this point on. So I'm under the belief if you can still buy something for under 1,100 a square foot, concrete, with parking, I think if you bought it, lived in it, enjoyed it, kept it for 20, 30, 40 years, you're going to do fantastic. But last thing I'll say, I read a couple of articles recently too about the cost of renting and that Tina effect. I don't think a lot of people realize what you're going to spend in a city like Vancouver over the next 25 or 30 years as a lifetime renter. You are going to easily drop $1 million to $1.2 million, $1.3 million on rent. I don't know, maybe you should ask our mayor, Kennedy Stewart. He's been a lifetime renter. I'd be interested, maybe you should ask him what he spent on rent over the last 20 years. He's not an owner. So I think a lot of people are realizing this, and especially the ones that are coming in line now and are better, more high-paying jobs coming into the downtown core and want to live downtown. They realize pretty quick that nothing wrong with renting while they save their down payment, but you want to be an owner in this city. There's no advantage to renting long-term. So for those reasons, I think 2020 is going to be another strong year. I think it's going to be better than 2019, and 2019 wasn't a bad year. It really wasn't. I think people that have bought or sold real estate or were in the market in 2019 looking to buy, especially in Vancouver or Mount Pleasant or Kitsilano, know that it was a tight market. Very little inventory. In some cases, towards the end of last year, there was bidding wars coming up again. I think 2020 is going to be a pretty good market. So if you're saving for your down payment right now, keep saving. I would be a buyer as soon as possible, provided you buy the right unit, you can qualify for it comfortably, and you've got an 8 to 10 year holding period, or you've got a backup plan where you can rent it if you decided to move. If you've been on the sidelines and you're pre-approved and waiting for this magical dip that has never really appeared, looking back on it in hindsight now, I think the bottom of the market here was January and February of 2019, the dead of winter, which it always usually is. And I'll base that on the fact that I had probably 10 condo sales in January and February in downtown Vancouver in 2019. 2 of them were in a boutique building on Hornby Street that I bought. I represented the buyers at $595 and $600. They were 620 square feet, 10-year-old building, concrete with parking. Just saw one in December selling there for $640. And I don't think this unit that just sold was as good as the 2 that I sold. So market, as you can see, is trying to trend up. If you're on the sidelines waiting for some magical time, go back and watch my blogs about timing markets. Buy it, hold it, enjoy it. Focus on what you can control, which is getting better at your career, making more money, moving up the ladder. But I think overall 2020 is going to be a pretty strong year. I do think we're going to get touched back onto record prices again for condos, especially downtown and the surrounding areas. I think inventory is going to be a big factor now for quality 1-bedrooms, quality 2-bedrooms, townhomes, and starter level detached homes. Inventory is going to be tight this year. And I blogged about that before. I think that's going to be the play in the next decade moving forward, for the simple reason that part of it has to go with the stress test. There's many people that own a 1-bedroom would like to move up to a 2, or own a 2-bedroom or a townhouse that like to move up to their first detached home. But with the stress test and how difficult it is to get a mortgage even before the stress test, they can't move up, so they're sitting tight. And that's why you're seeing a lack of inventory here, and I think that's going to play out here for the foreseeable future as well. And it's just another catalyst on why you want to get a piece of downtown Vancouver or get your principal residence, keep it while the getting's still good. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, I'll see you next week.